Good morning, folks. So, yesterday, while I was trying to cut the grass, you see, I blew the belt on my lawnmower. So I said, well, let me pull out the electric lawnmower and we'll use that until we can get somebody over here to replace the fan belt on the drive, right? And it was too high. The grass was too high for the electric lawnmower to cut. So I want you to take this as a lesson that redundancy sometimes will help you out, because all of this grass that you see cut, all of it, and yes, Patera, your garden looks a lot better than mine. Mine is like way overgrown. I had to weed eat it. I did all of this. It took me until about 11 o'clock last night to weed eat the yard. So, as a lesson for you, look, my tomatoes are coming in. See all my tomatoes coming in? Beautiful. They're beautiful. They're beautiful. Right? They all beautiful. Look at them. I got to get out here and cut them. Redundancy. So, if you have that in your mind when you're prepping, then, you go through the basic where you have, okay, to back up the electricity, I have a gas generator. Okay, what happens if the gas generator doesn't work? Okay, well, I have a solar generator. What happens if there's no sun out and you can't charge the solar generator? Okay, it's all redundancy, right? The world goes to crap. So you can't go to the grocery store. So what is your redundancy for food? Okay, your parlor, right? You go to your pantry and you've got redundancy. Okay, what happens if, for some ungodly known reason, you have to leave your home? Do you have a way to provide shelter for yourself? Okay, because now you no longer have your home. What is your redundancy for that scenario? So I want you to consider everything from a mindset of redundancy. As we saw yesterday, we have become absolutely too reliant on IT. If IT goes down, a lot of issues crop up. So if your credit card doesn't work, now you've got to go to cash. What if they're not accepting cash? Well, now you need silver and gold, copper, right? What if they're not accepting that? Well, now you need trade goods, okay? So this is all called redundancy, right? So this didn't only affect yesterday, this didn't only affect the airlines and some banks. This also affected some trucking companies, okay? So we had to go back to the old way of doing things yesterday in trucking, and that was pen and paper. And the FMCSA even put out a statement telling drivers yesterday to run paper logs. So that's a redundancy. So even in today's society, we should always be able to fall back on doing stuff manually or having a way to get something done that doesn't require IT. I think yesterday showed everybody that we need redundancy in our systems. Yesterday showed me that, even though I am definitely sore this morning, I got the job done. Not perfect, but the job is done. So I want you to take my experience yesterday. My riding lawnmower went down. It popped the belt for the cutting drive, right? It's like a fan belt that runs the belt, the blades underneath the lawnmower. That snapped. And the grass was just too high for my small electric lawnmower. So I had to go with the weed eater, right? So that's a redundancy. I want you to think of that whenever you go to think about prepping. So the reason why you keep canned foods is in case you can't go to the grocery store. That's a redundancy, so you have food to eat. The reason why you have not only a stove, but you also have some way to cook food either on a fire or on a grill, right? That's redundancy. So I think that people forget that, and they get so used to doing things a certain way that when something comes in and throws a crowbar in the system, then you're lost. You don't know what to do. So everything that you do as a prepper should be from the mindset of redundancy. Okay, what happens if your vehicle won't start? What do? Well, now you're going to either be walking, or you're going to be riding a bicycle, or you're going to have to come up with some other way to travel, right? Whether it be horseback, oxen, cart, whatever, right? So that's a redundancy. So that's my thoughts this morning. I'm a little bit sore this morning because I just cut almost 3/4 of an acre with a weed eater, and it took me about 5 hours. So yeah, we're gonna be stiff and sore today, and we're gonna kind of relax a little bit. So yeah, that's a lesson learned yesterday. I do think that I am going to go and buy one of the weed eaters that's got the little metal blades on it, instead of the string, because I used a whole bunch of weed eater string yesterday cutting this yard. And it's not perfect, but sometimes you don't have to be perfect. Sometimes you just need to get it done. And I think a lot of people, especially in the prepping community, they're telling people how to do things, but their way of doing things, they've reached a level that is almost perfection. Okay, and most normal people do not have the ability to climb to that level, and so they feel like they can't even start preparing for anything because they're not at, they don't have the experience to do it. So it puts off a lot of people from even storing 3 to 7 days of food, right? It puts off a lot of people from even starting to do something. So I've noticed that on some prepper channels, they are so far into prepping that they forget where they first started. Okay, one of the things that I started with when I started prepping was because in the winter in trucking, uh, our hours drop. So when our hours drop, money drops, right? Because I get paid by the hour. Yes, I know I'm in trucking, but I do get paid by the hour. So I had to come up with a solution in order to eat over the winter for the next season when business would pick up. And so I began to learn how to do things one step at a time. So in the summer when I have more money, I tend to stockpile for the winter when I have less money, right? And I also stockpile money to cover bills that might come up in the winter. That's called a redundancy, okay? And a lot of preppers do this naturally because they've learned this lesson. Whereas those who are just coming into prepping, they don't have these lessons behind them. So they don't know, like Patera with Appalachian Homestead has said, when you go to the store, buy 5 extra cans, right? They don't know to do that, right? Or they're so financially strapped that they can't do that. So what I say is if you buy a can of spaghetti sauce, like Prego or Ragu, okay, and you use a can a week, buy 2. This might be a small start for you to prepare. I mean, it's simple, right? It's simple. Um, a lot of times what you have on hand is already, you're already doing some prepping and you don't realize it, okay? Um, a good example is if you have our charcoal grill, that's actually a backup to your stove in the house. Okay, so you've already prepared for the fact that if you don't have electricity or gas for your stove, for your kitchen stove, you have the charcoal grill, so you're not too worried about that, right? Then you move from that small step, you move to doing more, and doing more can mean saving your spaghetti sauce jars and using those jars as storage for dry goods. So that's a redundancy. So now you've started doing small things that doesn't cost you anything because you've already bought the jar, which is why it's so expensive, is because you're paying for the jar. So you've already bought the jar. Now all you got to do is wash the jar, sterilize the jar, and then you can store your dry goods in it. Okay? Now the only difference is you might have to buy the oxygen absorbers unless you're using the jars to store let's say sugar, because then you don't use an oxygen absorber in sugar, or salt. You don't need an oxygen absorber in that either. Both of those will last thousands of years without ever going bad. So another thing that you can do to be redundant is, let's say that you have a certain recipe that you enjoy. Well, of course you're going to write that recipe down. Okay, you're either going to have it stored on a digital format or you're going to have it written down on paper, right? Or on 3x5 cards, right? Got a lot of recipes written on 3x5 cards. That's a redundancy so that you don't forget the steps for that recipe. So I want you to think of that today, and that's the word for today is redundancy, right? If you can't do it with one thing, what can you use to do it with something else, right? So Good example is I couldn't cut my grass last night because I blew the fan belt on the riding lawnmower, and the grass was too high for the regular lawnmower, regular push mower. So I had to go to my last backup, which was my weed eater. Sometimes that's how you learn lessons in prepping, is something happens and it causes you to go, oh, hey, you know what? I've got this, I can do this and this with it. And that's how you learn, is by doing. Here's a good example. My gardens look like crap right now, but I'm getting produce massively from it, and it's beautiful produce. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't look perfect. It doesn't have to look perfect. As long as it is producing for you, that's all that matters, right? Don't strive for perfection. Strive to be able to succeed. So those who strive for perfection are way above me, and those who strive for success are those who survive. So sometimes surviving does not mean, oh, I've got to go out here and bushcraft and be in the woods and that's how I'm going to survive. No, sometimes surviving is just a day-to-day basis, and you figure out things as you go. That's called rednecking it, right? So there's my redneck word for today: redundancy. Be redundant on everything that you do. If you have one broom, get a second one. Now you've got a redundancy in case you break your broom, right? There you go. There you go. Have a blessed day.